Welcome to Women Lead Arkansas's first broadcast in what will be a series of podcasts and video interviews. We feature women from throughout the state who are contributing to the economic and political welfare of Arkansas. Today we are joined by Randi Cruz of Greenwood and Luke Irvin, who is from Hope. They are two of the four founders of startup Techne. Techne is an application that will connect talent from the tech world with business owners looking for creatives to make their companies and products stronger. Girls are not typically steered toward the STEM fields. STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. In 2012, the Women's Foundation of Arkansas did a survey in the state, and they talked to girls and guidance counselors, and they found that girls are actually being steered actively away from the STEM fields and into the more traditional fields such as nursing and teaching. Randi had a similar situation, although she was not discouraged necessarily by teachers.
My background is very informal. I started getting into technology when I was in middle school, but I didn't really have anywhere to go to cultivate that curiosity. So I kind of ditched it for a short period of time until I picked it back up again when I started college. And I basically just had to self-teach myself how to do design work, how to code, and I'm very much a novice, but I'm super interested and always have been, and that's why I think it's so important for young women to get into technology, because they don't really, it's not really pushed on them to get into when they're young. Engineers are seen as guys, no offense, Luke. But women need to be in those roles as well. So that's kind of what made me pick it back up, but I've always been super curious about technology.
So would you say that you were actively steered away from technology, or it was just a situation where you couldn't find the resources so you moved on to other things?
No, I would say that I was definitely peer pressured away from technology. I mean, middle school is already an incredibly hard place to be for any young person. But to be a part of the in crowd and to not be made fun of, it was more important for me to join the cheerleading squad than to play at home on my computer. So that's basically what I did. I joined the cheerleading team. I've always had a very engineering type mindset. I want to disassemble anything and figure out how they assembled it so that I can reassemble it in a new and better way. But I've never had the knowledge to know where to go to produce a different reassembling of a product. And so I got to college and met with people who were more techy and nerdy and geeky, I guess, that had that knowledge and could say, here, you should go to Code Academy, or you should go to Treehouse. There's tons of sites out there where you can learn how to do these things, but nobody talks about them. And especially for women, we're just not pushed in that direction at all. So I think that it's 100% what Luke's saying. Like, talented people have a talent and they have a gift, and they have to practice that gift and use that gift to make it better. But at the same time, there have to be platforms or role models out there that people can look to and say, look, this is what they've done, how they got to where they are. I can do the same thing. Otherwise, the talent and the hands-on experience is just you in your room messing around.
Luke raises some important points about what we can do in Arkansas to make us more competitive.
But I didn't really start paying attention to it until I was kind of in my preteen teenage years. I guess that's the kind of that time, like, I was getting a little bit bored and started thinking a lot more, and started dabbling on them. So when I was a teenager, I was kind of teaching myself some basic code stuff, playing around with the website, kind of like what Natalie's been doing right now with her Harry Potter website. I was doing essentially the same kind of stuff in other forms. So it was pretty much around then I just kind of honed in on that, because that was a key interest of mine. And then in college, I was really big into networking and social media, because that was such a big part. One of those people like witnessed the birth of Facebook, and then I was there when Twitter started, things
kind of training did you get, or did you teach yourself? How does that work?
So for app development, that wasn't offered at my university, and it still isn't even offered in most universities in Arkansas. They're still like just now really starting to tap into that kind of stuff. So I helped set up pretty much the first and only tweet up in Conway, Arkansas, and there's about 40 to 50 of us kind of gathered, just hung out one afternoon. And this was when the first iPad came out. And one of my friends said, "Hey, you like Apple stuff, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Go talk to those two guys over there with the iPads. I think they built an app or something like that." So I approached them, and they're kind of showing off an app that they had just built. And I said, "This is really cool. Like, I want to do this stuff career-wise, so, let me intern for you." So I think we met the very next day, and he hired me on the spot for the next week. I started, this was kind of like the end of the school year, my junior year. So basically from there, I worked all summer long, 15 to 18 hours a day, just me and one other person who was one of the first Mac developers in the state of Arkansas. And he just helped me get kind of to speed, at least on the foundation of Objective-C, figuring out how the syntax worked. And then I just kept moving forward from there.
So, and I'm going to ask both of you this question, but Luke, let's start with you. You say that Arkansas universities are really just now starting to offer app development classes, for example. One, why do you think it's taken so long? And two, how would those kinds of classes or training benefit the state?
So I don't know the exact reason why it's taking them so long. This has been a struggle of mine. So the mission that I want to bring to Arkansas is I want to make sure every student in any grade, I don't care if it starts at kindergarten, I don't care if it starts at third grade, as long as they're learning how to read and write code throughout their school, that's something that I want to accomplish. I guess one of the biggest issues I've seen is just like the computer science curriculum hasn't really changed much. Like, it's kind of like they throw in little things here and there, maybe a little bit more towards data mining, but there's not been enough effort to pay attention to like the world of smartphones and tablets, and even beyond that, like user experience, design. Like, computer science students are not taught to understand the purpose of why design is so important to building a product, or even the importance of working with people. It's still kind of like, most of them that I've talked to have this mentality that they know how to fix problems, so they're going to sit at a desk and just do that. But they don't understand the importance of working with other people and understanding the needs of customers and to build an experience for the customers. So I think a lot of it, like, to go forward is going to have to be Startup Arkansas's job to kind of push that initiative and make sure that these schools are getting educated on what students need to be learning now. And then a lot of it's struggle. Like I talked to so many high school, junior high kids that are begging to learn this kind of stuff, but most schools don't have the professors to teach them. Mm-hmm. Like most of these teachers are going to grad school and they're learning all this stuff, but they're not even learning languages to build apps or anything. So there's roadblocks in many different levels. I mean, kids today are having to go teach themselves, and then they bring in shows of professors, and then they're begging to learn more in a classroom setting, but the kids are already so far ahead of the teachers that that's where the roadblock is.
It's a highly educated city. There's a lot of technology there. Dell is there. So if we want to bring people and companies like that to Arkansas, I would guess that we have to start with the universities and start teaching our students to learn how to do this. Is this something that you've given much thought to?
A lot of thought to. A lot of it's going to be the culture of things. I mean, we can't really, in a quick fashion, at least, recreate the whole Stanford culture. Like Stanford, Harvard, there's a culture about it, right? I mean, Stanford knows that every student that comes in, they expect them to drop out within the first year, and not drop out because they can't afford it, but they know they're going to drop out because they're there to make the connection and then go university. So, I'm a big on storytelling and just kind of telling our successes and then the successes of startups, because we had two really big startups in Arkansas, and then we just had a gap. There was no kind of initiative on building startup communities within Arkansas, but now there is. So I guess a lot of it's just going to have to be, we're going to have to start seeing younger companies form, whether they're in school or not, start sharing those stories, and it's almost just going to be like an infection, right? Kids got to see this. Kids got to believe that they can do it. If they don't see other people their age doing this kind of stuff, then they still have that corporate mentality where, they feel like they need to go work the 8-to-5 job or whatever. But yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to do, is just, that's why I do everything that I do today, because I want to keep sharing that story and make kids believe, don't let school be that roadblock for you. You're not going to get all your education in school. You actually have to get out and get your fingers dirty with stuff, and they just don't know that. So yeah, I think school is going to be a great place where it starts, and I think we're going to see it in junior high and high school before college. I think the younger kids have way more drive than college kids right now. I can't tap into the minds of college kids today. I don't know how they're thinking and where they're looking, but the younger kids I can follow much easier.
There's also in junior high and middle school not as much pressure to pursue that American dream, right? So once you get to college, it's all about finding a husband or wife, getting married, securing a very stable job, and supporting a family. And when you get to college, there's so much pressure to follow that, linear model. And in junior high and middle school, it's more about play and following your passions and being creative. There's way less pressure at that age.
I do want to talk about startups and people of your generation who are doing it differently, right? So it sounds like you're sort of rejecting the social expectations, and especially in the South. There's a difference in the South, especially for women, and how the path that we're supposed to take. Randi's path is that of entrepreneur. She went to Fayetteville Startup Weekend, where participants had 54 hours to pitch their idea. Those were voted on. Randi's ended up being in the top 10, so Techne moved on, and she had to put a team together, do further development. They met with coaches, and then they presented their business plan again on Sunday night. And while they didn't make the top 2 spots, they did qualify to move on to the Global Startup Battle. This is also where she met her teammates, Laura Weiderhaft from Rogers and Natali Hall from Little Rock.
There was probably about 30 people that pitched ideas, and you had 60 seconds to pitch your idea. My original Techne originally was basically a platform that we're incorporating now, the marketing freelancing aspect, where students can go to and market their own skills without having a formal degree in computer science or graphic design. So it would be a place they could go to and still earn money. And I wanted to extend that to junior high and high school students as well. So if they started learning at a young age, like Luke did, then they could get practice developing and designing with small businesses in the community or, individual entrepreneurs and get that hands-on experience that they need. And then there was also the learning component, which would be more like a roadmap or a toolkit to navigate the web. So it would be a place that students could go to online, and it would point them to all the really great and helpful learning sites that there are out there to learn how to code and to design and so on and so forth. So there were 2 components to it. Everybody gets to vote. You hold up a big Post-it note, and then everyone gets 3 sticky notes, and they get to come stick a note on the 3 ideas that they like the most. The top 10 teams stand around, and people will come up to you and say, okay, what do you need? Do you need a web developer? Do you need an app developer? Do you need front end? Do you need back end work? Do you need a marketing person, business person, so on and so forth? And so that happened, and Laura, she was my friend, decided to join my group, and she was genuinely interested as well. And then I met Natali in kind of the icebreaker that we had before we started to do our pitches. Mm-hmm. And her and I kind of instantly hit it off. Not really. We were just the 2 that were the most outspoken in the group that we were in. over to my group, and I was like, you need to be in our group. So she did, and then we had, like I said, a couple of guys who were interested, but not really that interested. And so I finally just had to put my foot down and say, like, look, if you're not going to be in this, then we don't want you in our group. So either you're in or you're out. And they were like, we're going to think about it. And I was like, okay, then you're out. And then we just, as three ladies, just walked over to our table and got started. And then you just watch all the presentations, and then the judges get to ask you 3 or 4 questions after your presentation. And then they go into a room and decide basically who they want to be the winners.
Luke, from your perspective now, will you kind of walk me through what appealed to you? You know, did you vote for Techne or what became Techne in the first round? And tell me about why you sort of chose this project to get involved with as opposed to others.
There's a few teams I was really excited about, this being one of them, because I knew they had something, but I struggled with kind of figuring out the missing pieces from where they're at, because I knew like the education thing for the younger kids and monetizing that was going to be a little difficult. So I kept up with them as much as I could, because I know at some point, like you girls were just like heads down, like I couldn't even get a word out of you, because y'all were just so good time getting stuff done. So during that, there's at one point on Saturday where no one wanted to talk, so I just kind of utilized that time to actually build out my app and work on my presentation. So during the Sunday presentation, the original team had talked with other coaches and mentors, so you knew you had to pivot a little bit. So in the end, their concept kind of fit in with mine pretty well. And I didn't really work on a lot of things. I knew that I could build the app, and that's all I really cared about was getting a product ready, and I wanted to ship it out in the market and see if it would fit. I didn't put any real time or effort into a business model or figuring out how to monetize this when they spent a lot of time on that aspect. So at the end, the feedback that we had got from some of the judges were that they were confused, like why we didn't join forces. They said your strengths and weaknesses really balance each other, and if y'all would have just kind of put everything together, we would have had a stronger chance of possibly either placing in first or second, or at least winning one of the other prizes.
To me, the real value for this is going to be that it's basically going to allow students to display their skill set and their work experience on an app or on a web platform. So the education system, as we talked about a little bit earlier, is not able to keep up with technology, the rate that technology is growing at. And especially with all the cuts that are being made to the education spending right now, they aren't able to, and they're not going to be able to produce a workforce that is going to be able to have the graphic design skills or the computer design or computer coding skills that these businesses are going to need. So there needs to be a place that companies can go to find people that are talented and skilled. And there also needs to be a place that those people, for example, college students who are either working on a degree or just doing, learning how to do graphic design on their own like I did, that they can go to and get hands-on experience and then earn money for doing that. And then they can add that to their portfolio and then potentially show that to a business owner and say, look, I don't have a formal degree, but this is what I've done in the past, and these are the works that I've produced. And I'm a capable, talented young person who thinks that I can bring value to your company. So that's basically what Techne is going to be. It's going to be an app that freelancers or young professionals and businesses can go to and find people in their own communities that they can connect with and meet with face-to-face and form meaningful business relationships. Techne now, and especially when we incorporate that learning component, is going to be so powerful because it's going to provide a way for students to get that education outside of public schools that will complement their formal education very well and allow them to be more successful in their lives generally.
What there a community in Arkansas of people just like you guys who, if you need to bounce ideas off each other, if you're stuck on some, I don't know, coding problem, you can communicate?
We have very, very, very strong community, like geek tech community in Arkansas. I think in a sense, it's all is one, but there's a community in Northwest Arkansas and there's a community in Central Arkansas. And this was actually at one of the bar camps we had in Conway, but it was brought up in this huge debate that, one of the biggest struggles was that there was, the bridge was broken between different sections of the state. Like, so most people did not know that there was a bar camp in Jonesboro. Most people did not know about Made by Few. Most people did not know about Startup Weekend. Like, people just have busy lives, right? So certain little pieces of information could get connected. So to bridge that gap, we kind of found a hashtag on Twitter that kind of helped. So if you search hashtag ARIDEA, that's like that centralized hub that all of us really go to. So Startup Arkansas, that's the other huge place. Like, I think most people can't grasp what Startup Arkansas is, but it is the place you want to go for everything technology or entrepreneur related within the state of Arkansas. You will find everything there.
Luke is more, I guess, he kind of represents the people that have fully or adapted or assimilated into tech culture, where things are so fast-paced and it's not so much about the planning and the researching. It's more about, like, let's just throw out as many ideas and try and work on them as fast as possible to try and get a product out there that works. Whereas I'm a little bit more old school, and I'm kind of a balance between both worlds. The more, I guess, old school, you research, you build a business plan. I mean, I've reached over and grabbed they're like, this is my binder of research that I did before going to Startup Weekend. So I did a lot of the business planning prior to Startup Weekend. And I don't think that I would have been able to be as flexible if I hadn't had so much knowledge and research that I'd already done.
Do you think that there is a difference between men and women in that sense? Women tend to be more planners. Men are more likely to take risks. Studies show that a woman has to consider herself 100% qualified before she'll pursue a promotion or a job. Men only need 60%, and they will go for it. So, do you see that play out in technology?
Most definitely. I mean, if you think about it, not all throughout history, but at least from the 1900s until now, women have been housewives. They've been secretaries. They've been the people that have always traditionally been the organizers and the planners and the ones that help other people get their stuff together and organize so that they can produce a quality product or have a more successful industry. So yes, I think that history of women being in those roles allows us to, it's just kind of what women have always done, and so we just gain that knowledge. But I 100% agree with you that women cannot take the same risks that men can. We just can't. Women are still only making 87 cents to the man's dollar, and in a world where women already feel so insecure generally, to also feel like we have to feel insecure financially is a huge thing to throw yourself into.
Mm-hmm.
And women also need a lot of validation that what they're contributing to a group is valuable. To be a part of the global startup competition and be in the women's circle, the person who actually gives the sales pitch has to be a woman. The group has to be led by a woman, and 50% of the team has to be women. So we have 3 women on our team and Luke. So we meet the qualifications of all 3 of those. So I gave the sales pitch. I guess you could technically say that I'm leading the group, but I just kind of think we're all leaders. And then also 50%. So what's the mean to me to be a part of that? I think it's incredibly valuable and just awesome that they have dedicated a separate space for women to recognize one another and to see that they're not alone out there and wanting to create startups and to contribute to the world. They have their own circle within this larger global startup battle, but they can have their own voices, and that guarantees their voices to be heard. So when 50% of the group are women, so that means 50% of all the voices we hear in that circle are going to be women, and that to me is crucial. And I'm not going to say that within any of the other circles, women's voices would get dulled or, pushed to the side a little bit, but they might. And historically, women's voices have been marginalized. So for women to have their own circle and their own place that they can go to and not only compete against one another, but to validate one another and see that there are other women globally who are producing quality work and contributing value